everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today we're going to be talking about a tough subject that many of you have been waiting for me to cover: how to handle a kinky breakup. Because going through the end of a vanilla relationship is hard enough, but when you add kink on top of that, it can be a minefield to try and navigate successfully. So in this video, I want to talk about what to do from both sides of the slash to end things as amicably as possible, and most importantly, we'll also discuss what to do to emotionally survive during the worst parts of the breakup process, and what you can do to help yourself heal in the long term, as hard as that might seem right now. So let's just go ahead and get into it. And I think one of the reasons why BDSM breakups can be especially hard is because we often do a lot in kink, especially in power exchange, to sort of obfuscate the reality that most relationships will eventually end. We sign contracts for forever and a day. We wear eternity collars. We promise our unending loyalty through death and beyond. Some people are drawn to kink because they believe the high level of devotion and intensity will prevent them from ever experiencing loss again, or that it can somehow save an existing relationship that's already on the rocks. But no matter what we promise each other, reality often has different plans. This can leave people in a lurch when their fancy 20-page contract or protocol book has nothing in it to account for a possible breakup or ending of a relationship. Though often less intense, the same is true for kinky play partnerships as well. We negotiate what we want to do together, how we prefer to be touched, and what we need for aftercare. However, virtually no one discusses what to do when the play relationship ends, so people default back to their bad vanilla breakup habits. They ghost people, they block people one day without any kind of warning, they delay hard conversations until the worst possible moment, and they involve anyone who will listen in the breakup process. To say that kinky breakups can get messy is an understatement, even more so than in everyday society, because one, if you play in a public scene, you don't have to just navigate the breakup itself, but how space and community will be shared going forward, and two, we have no mainstream example showing us how to end a kinky relationship the right way, if such a thing is even really possible to do anyhow. This is on top of the fact that kinky dynamics can easily accelerate over a very short period of time, and what might be an easy breakup a couple of weeks or months into a relationship for a vanilla person can be devastating for a kinky person who has to contend with all the hopped up next level bonding they've experienced while engaging in taboo fantasies or heavy physical play, especially if it was the first time they've ever gotten to do those things before. Plus the fact that many kink relationships will eventually develop a level of intentional codependence that can make recovering after the end of a relationship take even longer. But before we start talking about how to cope with those breakups, let's go ahead and hear a word from today's sponsor. Hi everyone, this is Evie here to tell you all about today's sponsor, BEDUCATED. And you all know that once again, Black Friday season is upon us, and this is usually a time of year where we tend to buy a lot of physical stuff that we don't really need, only to then have it take up yet more room on our shelves without actually improving our lives. But BEDUCATED is offering a Black Friday deal that you actually won't regret. For a very limited time, only between now and December 3rd, you will be able to get a full year of BEDUCATED access for only $69. That's 65% off using the code EVLupine69 at checkout. It can be so hard to find good, high-quality adult intimacy education online these days, but BEDUCATED actually delivers on that promise. One of my favorite courses that they offer is their one on sensate focus. This is actually something that I had originally learned about in therapy, and it's something I'm always going back to and revisiting. It's essentially just a really great way to be able to map out what you and your partners enjoy in a non-judgmental, non-pressury kind of way. And as somebody who is kinky and aspec, my reactions do not always follow the typical model to begin with, I will tell you that. So Sensate Focus removes all those those assumptions and guesswork, and knowing how to use it has genuinely, fundamentally changed how I approach relationships. And it's something that I wish everybody knew about. And specifically relating to today's video, I also recommend looking at Lola Jean's class on dealing with rejection, because one of the hardest parts about coping with a breakup can be getting to that point where you actually feel comfortable with the idea of going out again and checking out dating apps. And this class can really help you if you're afraid of being rejected, or you don't know how you're going to be able to handle it when you're in the dating pool again. Definitely recommend checking out that one. So if either of these courses or one of their over 100 other listings interest you, you can go ahead and once again check out BEDUCATED using the link in my description box with the code EVLupine69 at checkout, only between now and December 3rd. And thank you once again to BEDUCATED for sponsoring us. And now back to the video. But as much as we like the illusion that DS will last forever and ever, is there any truth behind that idea? There's not a lot of data about this, but what we do have suggests that BDSM relationships actually last slightly less time than vanilla ones do. But that doesn't mean that kinky relationships are worse. That may actually suggest that kinky people become aware of incompatibilities earlier on in relationships, are less willing to attempt to make do with relationships that don't fulfill them, or are more willing to put their own needs above the idea of the relationship itself. I bring this up because I want to point out one thing that's important to know when recovering from a breakup. Basic incompatibility won't change. As the saying goes, it's called a breakup because it's broken. At the beginning of a relationship, when we're excited about someone, we might be tempted to compromise on our needs. We might tell ourselves, oh, it's not a big deal that they for sure want kids, and I don't think that I do. One of us might change our minds. And we overlook that right up until we can't anymore. This is also why having self-awareness before entering a relationship is so beneficial, especially with BDSM. If we know for sure what we want and what we don't want, we can more accurately determine which people we are more likely to work with in the long term, versus just going with whoever seems nice and whoever likes us back, especially if before we got into kink, we felt like we had to just sort of play musical chairs with our relationships. While it might seem painful to say no to a relationship just because someone wants intense humiliation while we want more of a cuddly caregiver dynamic, it's always going to be more painful to try and say no 3, 6, or 12 months into dating someone or playing with them. We might think, oh, well, if I could just have learned to like this one thing that's totally not my thing, we could have actually worked out. But that isn't being true to yourself, is it? Don't try to contort yourself just to fit into somebody else's life or to be what they need. Don't break yourself to please others. Not only is that unsustainable in the long term, you're also damaging yourself in the process. Don't let the idea of maintaining the relationship above everything else trap you. You deserve relationships where you don't have to bend yourself into pretzels to get your needs met. But even knowing that, going through the end of a relationship can still suck, so what can we do to make breakups less painful when they do happen? I know it can feel scary to discuss what to do at the end of a relationship when it's barely just started, but that is the easiest time to talk about it, during your negotiation processes. If you have a contract or a power exchange relationship, include terms that both parties agree to and are willing to abide by. Giant note here, by the way, this is super important. I would even say a probable must-have if you are doing any kind of intentional behavior modification. Reinforcement is a powerful tool, and learning how to extinguish an unwanted trained response is just as important as knowing how to create it in the first place. How would you handle the deprogramming process? How long would you commit to that for? Who would you do it with? Keep in mind that some types of training, like those involving, let's say, physical pleasure, can be extremely sticky and may take months or even years to fully break free from. Knowing this is part of being able to give informed consent to engaging in such play, and hopefully, if you choose to do so, this is a known risk factor for both you and your partner. Beyond that, other things to think about would be, what will you do about shared toys and collars? What will you do about areas where the S-type has given up high levels of control, like financial choices or their wardrobe? What about speech and eye contact training? What will you do about FetLife relationship statuses? How do you want to tell your friends, or when? What about events that are both important to you, like munches or play parties or particular conventions? All of these are important questions to think about, and there are no definite right or wrong answers for what you want. Some people believe that collars are always the property of the D-type and should be returned to them at the end of a relationship. Others say that the collar is unique to each S-type, and the D-type wouldn't expect to take it back, much less ever reuse it with somebody else. When it comes to friends and events, some folks would want to agree not to attend certain parties at the same time for a while, whereas others wouldn't mind at all. This is why it's a good idea to negotiate these things as much as you can when you're discussing the rest of the relationship, rather than leaving it up to chance later on down the line. Particularly with higher levels of power exchange, some people will include a specific de-escalation protocol to follow. If you're used to following, let's say, 10 rules a day and having your entire day planned for you hour by hour, slowly readjusting to normal life by gradually reintroducing choices and autonomy you haven't had for a long time can make the process easier if you have the bandwidth to have a little bit of a slower breakup process. Some people will also recruit a friend to act as a sort of interim transition dom when this happens too, so they don't have to continue to submit to someone who they will no longer be with. They might, for example, continue to ask this transition dom for approval of their daily outfit, or send them pictures of their lunch, without the use of formal titles or third-person speech. They might get encouragement whenever they do something on their own that they haven't done for a long time, like just making coffee only for themselves in the way that they prefer, or choosing their own bedtime. A good rule of thumb to follow is that the longer the relationship lasted for, and the more intense it was, the longer and more gradual the transition period should be. In ideal circumstances anyway, which we don't always have, and in fact I would say we rarely have. So what do we do when we can't rely on a preset protocol to help us out? Well, we just have to be able to help ourselves. And before we get into that, I want to have just like a brief little sidebar about how to have the breakup conversation in case you are thinking about doing a breakup and you're watching this video, because it does always hurt, but there are ways to make it suck less. So regardless of whether or not you have a power exchange relationship, something anyone can benefit from at the end of a relationship is clarity. This is perhaps the number one thing you can do if you want to truly be kind rather than sugarcoating the truth. This isn't about offering closure per se. It's more about making it like 100% clear when a breakup is a breakup and when it isn't. Say what you mean. If you have zero desire to ever be intimate with this person again or ever talk to them again, make that obvious. If they ask like, oh, what, are we breaking up? Are we still together? Being honest means saying, yes, we're over, we are breaking up. Not skirting around reality by going, oh, well, but like, I still want to spend time with you though, or using other similar phrases to avoid the direct, sharp pain of rejection. Being unclear or imprecise only makes that pain worse. I recommend planning what you want to say ahead of time, because even if you are totally certain that you have to break up, attachments ending hurts really badly, and it can be tempting to change your mind and soften that ending at the last moment by saying things you might not really want or need. Planning things out makes it easier to stick to your goals. The breakup conversation is also not the time, in my opinion, to grandstand about all the reasons you're breaking up. Offering reasons, just for some people at least, invites debate. Like, if they can prove that you're wrong about points 2 and 6, maybe you don't have to break up after all. So just don't give people that room. Again, be clear, be kind. Don't leave room for people to misinterpret you. And eventually giving those reasons can be nice, but it's not necessary. No is a complete sentence. Always. Simply saying, I have thought a lot about this and I've decided that I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. This is not up for debate. Is much better than listing out every grievance and everything they've ever done wrong or why you're not happy. It's tempting because sometimes part of us hopes that they'll finally understand and maybe change in the ways that we wish they would. But that's not how this works. They might even promise they'll change and they'll bargain, but if they didn't listen during the rest of the relationship, are they really going to change once they have the security of your relationship back? At some point down the line, if you're both open to it, a relationship autopsy of sorts might be possible, but doing so during the breakup itself isn't usually helpful for anyone, and it really just makes the breakup process more murky or makes it seem like it's something that's up to being negotiated around. But with that being said, sidebar over, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this conversation for today. Assuming you don't have a nice pre-planned breakup protocol or that you had blew up in your face maybe, how the heck do you take care of yourself while experiencing so much emotional pain and confusion? Even if you initiated the breakup, it can still be a complex process to move on and start feeling better. So let's discuss some emotional triage. Big disclaimer once again here that I am not a therapist, much less your therapist. So please discuss any techniques I suggest here with them first. This is just what helps me, and what helps me might not be right for your brain, okay? So number one, I'm going to assume that when the breakup pain is really acute, it's going to be real difficult for you to stay grounded and in your body and in the present moment because, hey, the present moment does kind of suck. And that's just reality. We can't stop it from hurting entirely because being sad, angry, disappointed is going to hurt. That's what having those emotions can be like. But we can help ourselves from turning that hurt into suffering. So number one, I like to try to help my nervous system calm the F down. For me, that might mean taking a short, cold shower, doing some intense exercise at the gym, or jogging on the treadmill. Something that requires a lot of energy and can help snap me out of my ruminating brain space. Then I try to observe how I'm thinking, what thoughts are coming up for me, how am I framing this situation, is my internal language something like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I will never feel better, ever. Or maybe I'm thinking something like, this literally can't be happening, I can't believe it. And if so, if I'm thinking things like that, I know that I'm leaping ahead, I'm drawing conclusions, and I'm denying reality. None of those thoughts are actually definite truth, and I do know in my wise mind, that might not always be in the driver's seat all the time, that rejecting reality just leads to that suffering. So I try to gently reframe things in a more accurate way, like, I can't change the fact that we're broken up now, but I know that it's not going to feel as bad forever. Just keep doing that as many times as your thoughts come up. Be gentle with your feelings though. Don't tell yourself that you're bad or wrong or whatever for being upset. It's totally rational to be upset. Just gently redirect your thoughts to something that fits reality a little bit better. But if you're like me and you have an active inner monologue like all the time and tend to ruminate, constantly reframing those thoughts can be a tiring battle. And when we really can't change what's happening in the moment, sometimes we just need a little vacation from our brains. While you should watch out for long-term and continual avoidance like binging, excessive sleeping, all-night video game sessions, and substance use, short-term purposeful avoidance can help you weather the worst of the storm. You're essentially going into your little brain cellar. Anything that requires both your hands and your brain is best, such as playing an engrossing video game with a controller, reading a physical book, going horseback riding, solving puzzles, playing Sudoku with a pencil and paper, or learning a dance routine to a song you love on TikTok. We all cope in different ways. It's fine. The more you can focus on it, the better though. Spending time with people in a thoughtful way is another option. Connecting with people positively can remind us that we're not alone and that the world isn't over just because one relationship is. go over to your friend's house and cook them dinner, volunteer for the day, surprise someone with homemade baked goods, something like that. You can also distract yourself with other more intense emotions, which I know can be hard to do. Try to get them roughly a similar level of intensity enough to distract yourself. And this is a more advanced maneuver, but it works for some people if you at least aren't a sort of like, but everything reminds me of them kind of person. Watch movies that are emotional or listen to really emotional music, but not the kinds of emotions you're trying to get away from. Instead of listening to all your favorite sad emo breakup tracks, what music makes you burst into happy tears? What always melts your heart from sheer aggressive cuteness overload? Go for that instead. Even anger, if you're mostly feeling sad, can be fine too. And finally, embrace as many sensations as you can. It is easier to distance ourselves from unpleasant thoughts when we have a lot of sensory experiences going on simultaneously. If you know about shower oranges, this is a shower orange kind of moment. However, if you don't, essentially, this is about engaging in as many sensory experiences as possible simultaneously, like taking a warm, scented bubble bath while listening to Chapel Roan as a candle is burning in the background while you eat a slice of warm cobbler and cold ice cream. It can be a fun game to figure out how you can get taste, touch, scent, sounds, and smell to all work together at the same time, and hopefully, somehow, by doing all of this in whatever combination feels good, it will make the pain easier to bear, just a little. If part of your breakup routine is fighting the urge to text your ex all the reasons they suck or all the reasons that you think you should get back together, I recommend writing all of your thoughts down on a whiteboard as they come up and then erasing them, or putting them down in a notes app and then deleting it, or writing it out longhand and ceremonially throwing the pages away. Even just screaming the words you want to say into a pillow can help. I am a big believer in clean breaks when it comes to relationships ending, as much as possible anyway, obviously things like deprogramming notwithstanding. Staying in continual contact, texting them all of your thoughts, just drags out the process. So fight that urge and get it out in a way that doesn't make the pain ultimately last longer. Once we're out of the immediate emotional triage zone, though, now we have to figure out how we're actually going to act like we're broken up. How are we going to make that transition? Again, I am a clean breakup person. Once things are done, they should be done, and if we continue to act overly relationshipy outside of our contractual agreements, that door to attachment stays open, which delays our ability to accept that things are really over. And I'm not going to say that you should treat your now ex like a stranger and give him the cold shoulder, but that is also kind of the idea. Avoid places and things that remind you of them for a little while, and that could look like avoiding parties and munches you used to go to together, at least for a time. Do not ruminate on their past text messages or their past photos or photos together. I recommend wiping all photos and text messages as soon as possible, honestly. Take down your shared photos on FetLife. If it's hard to resist the urge to contact them, block them, remove their contact info, do not stalk their social media profiles or their best friend's social media or their families. Dear God, please do not do any of that. Now, if you have a reason to believe that they might actually need to get in touch because maybe you had a really enmeshed life, you can put their number on a piece of paper and give it to a friend. Or heck, you could just recruit a friend to be a go-between for you. And while venting and processing is going to be part of this, be careful about how you go about that. Either framing them as all good or all bad to other people, but especially don't just ruminate on the good times, how special that you were together or how much you loved each other. By checking up on them and staying in our affectionate feelings towards them in our brains, we are, again, delaying the ending of that attachment. And if it wasn't clear still, the longer doing that takes, the worse it's going to hurt. So don't. This is ripping off the emotional band-aid so we don't have to do it over the course of weeks and months. And for the love of God, please do not make any last-ditch, grand romantic efforts towards them. Do not send them flowers. Do not handwrite them a card. Do not get a courier to send them chocolate. Do not show up under their windowsill at midnight with a boombox playing your love song together. Dear God, no. This is not a Hallmark movie. That's not how this works. At best, it's going to make you seem desperate, and at worst, it's gonna make you seem like a stalker that can't take no for an answer. And frankly, sometimes you might be, so nip that in the bud because it's not good for either of you. And if you regret not doing those things more in this relationship, if you wish you would have made those gestures because you think you would have made a difference if you had been able to do those things, that's a sign to do that going forward in future relationships. It's not going to fix the one that already went by. Just as an FYI there. But anyways, we're working on weakening the attachment we feel towards our now ex-partner. But what else can we do? One thing we don't really reckon with in Western society is the fact that breakups are a grief process. Western society just sort of hates grieving and tries to make it as quick as possible. And even if we knew the relationship had to end, we can still feel a sense of loss, and we will. Temporary distraction to get through the worst of it aside, we do need to go through that grieving process. How to do that could fill a book, and I am sure it has many times over, but this is what works for me. I've actually particularly enjoyed using a grief deck in the past, which is a set of illustrated cards with guided meditation suggestions and reflection prompts on the back that you can use to help your brain slowly process the grief that you're feeling in your body. Noticing the emotions in my body as they arise and the thoughts that I have about those feelings and jotting them down also feels good too. Not trying to fight my sadness or anger, for example, but just letting them be there fully with me, crying when I feel like crying, screaming into a pillow when I feel like screaming. The most important thing, though, is not denying reality. Telling my brain as often as possible that, yes, this is real, this has happened, but we are going to get through this, and not putting a timeline and when I need to be ready by. Grief is kind of a funny thing. I've had breakups where I was the one to start the breakup, and then it still took me like 6 months to feel that they were like truly gone from my life because we were so attached. And then I've had other relationships where the breakup was more mutual, and it hurt like tearing barbed wire out of my skin to do it, but we both knew it was the right thing. Yet I had processed all of those feelings like a week later and was like ready to move on. Grief doesn't happen on any particular timeline that we might expect. It finishes itself when it's ready to be done, you know? And finally, what can we do to make losing a relationship less distressing in the long term? And here, again, I'm going to point to Western society. We often think of our romantic relationships as this be-all, end-all thing, and that they should meet all of our needs and be a like perfect special person. So especially if your breakup involves a romantic or at least a pretty exclusionary and focused relationship, while also being kinky, chances are you may have neglected your other relationships while you were with them, including the one with yourself. So invest in your friendships. Spend time with people. Get back into your old hobbies you didn't get to do as much as you wanted to when you were still dating them. Or heck, find a new hobby. Find a new community to be a part of. But basically, go touch grass and find community where you can. Breakups are even harder when we have fewer consistent attachments to rely on. But when we have multiple secure attachments that we can count on, it makes the process a little bit less scary. And it shows you that you aren't alone and that you can find happiness and fulfillment in your life without it being focused on just only one person. And in the future, don't be that person who loses themselves so much in a relationship that they stop talking to their friends or showing up for other people. Luckily, the kink community is a great place to make friends as an adult. In fact, I would say it is one of the easiest places in real life I can think of to be able to do that in the modern age. So the world is your oyster. When you feel ready, go out, try some new things, meet new people, not to find a replacement attachment, but because you know that you want a human connection that's genuine, that isn't just about romance or physical intimacy. And above all, don't forget to be patient with yourself. It's okay to feel whatever feelings that you're feeling, especially when they're confusing and you hate them and you miss them and you want them back, you never want to see them again. That's part of attachments ending. Our brain is trying to fling out whatever emotional feelings kind of help to deal with that, and they're not always the most helpful in the moment, but they do happen. And especially if you haven't gone through a breakup in kink before, if you felt really bonded, It's okay for it to take a long time for you to feel ready to date again, or to do kink again, or to go to parties again. That's just part of the process, and you do not have to put any particular timeline on what your grieving looks like or when you're ready to go back out into the community. And as much as you can, take that time to yourself to really reflect on what you want in the future. And if the source of, at least part of the reason for your breakup was a mismatch in kink, or you had different levels of desire or something like that, try to figure out what you need going forward in a relationship, how you can advocate for that earlier on, and what to look for to make sure that you will actually be able to get those needs met, to make it more likely that you will have a more successful relationship the next time around. I know in my experience in kink, when I've gone through breakups, it has almost always been the case. I would say like 90+% of the time I've gone through a breakup in kink, the next time I get into a relationship after the past one, I find a person that I'm more compatible with, that I have more in common with outside of kink, and things just get like better and better because I have been able to learn from those breakup experiences to not repeat past mistakes. It's a very thin silver lining, I know, especially when you are in the middle of processing a breakup right now, but it can actually be helpful. And with that being said, that's everything that I wanted to share today about coping with BDSM breakups. I am planning on doing some future videos where I talk about like general behavior modification and going into more detail about like de-escalation from behavior modification, because that is a big area that a lot of people skip over when negotiating that for their relationships. And I have seen it cause some real harm. But any thoughts and feelings y'all have, you can leave in a comment down below, especially if you have gone through a kinky breakup. I would love to hear how you coped with it, what helped you get through it, and what did you learn from it, if anything. And finally, if you really want to support my channel, you can go ahead and subscribe, because I make videos every week talking about kink and BDSM, as well as relationship advice, polyamory, alternative relationships, and so much more. And finally, if you really want to support what I do, the best place you can do that is with Patreon. To that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.